What's up, y'all? I just wanted to do a video on the new Razer Blade Pro 17 and also um, kind of talk about my current work at home setup. So, instead of just doing this on the Razer Blade Pro 17, 2020, early 2020, I thought I might just go over everything else I'm using with it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. This is the 4K 120 hertz Razer Blade Pro 17 2020 model, and it is just came out recently. Retails for $3,800. I haven't modified anything yet, and it's pretty much as it came. No issues to speak of. Build quality is excellent. It's very sturdy. I had a problem with the hinge an Alienware I bought earlier, so I returned that and started to look for something else. And actually, now I'm kind of convinced that this is probably the best thing you can get for a laptop. And that's for a couple of reasons. So, first, the big stunner here is the display. So you can see the display is very reflective, so my reflection's in it. But it is a 4K 120 hertz display, and I don't know if it's going to show up on camera, but the scrolling is extremely smooth. So if you've experienced 120K on, say, an iPad, you know how even in day-to-day usage, just reading documents, PDFs, etc., there's actually a huge benefit there. Yeah, so that besides the scrolling itself, it's actually a very nice display. So in terms of color gamut, it is extremely good. So let me pull up the display monitor test. There we go. I believe it's maxed out. It's max brightness. This thing gets to about 400, a bit more than that in terms of nits of brightness. It's not as bright as my MacBook Pro 15 2018, but it is still really bright compared to this 4K LG here. It is definitely brighter. Does not really compare to this ultrafine, unfortunately. So I can show this ultrafine, I believe, is only at 60 or 70% brightness, but let me just pull that up. I don't know if that's visible, but there is the 4K ultrafine. This is an Apple centric monitor, obviously, with Thunderbolt. Is quite a bit brighter. When you set it to 100, it goes to 600 or nits or above, really approaching the brightness of like an iPad or an iPhone in overdrive mode. But yeah, the display is very good in terms of color quality. Let me just compare. The blacks are not terrible, but it's not as good as actually either of the other LG displays. But it's pretty good in terms of overall color, and color gamut is excellent with near DCI-P3. Uniformity isn't bad, although you can see, I don't know if it's very visible here, but the left side of the screen is probably 50 nits less bright than overall, but the center brightness is uniform, which is excellent. And you can see on the LG display there, it is very uniform. So in terms of display quality, you can't really beat an ultrafine. This display panel is made by AU Optronics, not quite an LG, but it's really good. And I have not seen another 4K 120 hertz display yet. So, this is the only option right now, and it ends up being a really excellent monitor. So, the downside is that it is reflective, so you can see the reflections. There is glare, but again, my other favorite monitor, my 23.7-inch ultrafine, also has that issue. You can compare that with another LG 4K display. This one does not have the It does have anti-glare, so it does not have the reflections, and it cuts it down in a major way. But this was a $400 display that I got from Best Buy. This is a $700 display from Apple, so you can see, you get what you pay for. And a huge part of this Blade Pro 17 is the amazing display, and with that, you're going to get fluid gaming. You're going to get fluid day-to-day use, and it's just quite amazing. And if you're wondering what am I using to scroll there, so the touchpad obviously scrolls really well. The keyboard's not bad. It's not, mechanical keyboard, but it's not bad. I'm actually using a Apple Magic Trackpad on Windows 10, and these work perfectly fine wired. It does all of the multi-finger gestures, as you can see. So, it's pretty good. All right, so a little bit about performance, and it is running the 10th Gen Core i7. Let me just bring up my 3D Mark, show you guys the system details. 16 gigs of RAM at 2933 megahertz. It boosts to 5.1 gigahertz. Although I don't think I've actually seen it boost that high. It mostly about 4.8, 4.9 is what I typically see. It's got a RTX 2080 Super Max Q. And yeah, so it is one of the faster computers you can get. You can upgrade this to 64 gigs of RAM, but Windows RAM usage is, memory usage is pretty efficient, so I haven't had a need to do that. I think I will update it or upgrade it to 32 or 64 when I can get high-speed versions. And right now there is actually an issue with the BIOS. The BIOS does not support XMP, so there's actually no point in really buying high-speed, expensive SODIMMs that won't run. It'll probably actually downspeed to 2666, yeah. And so there's a BIOS update that's going to address that. And one of the reasons I'm a little bit hesitant on doing the BIOS update is what I'll talk about next is gaming performance and thermals. So this is undervolted to negative 875 millivolts. It's stable here. For my machine, for my Intel chip, it does not go above negative 80 millivolts. At negative 100, I get blue screens randomly, so it's not stable even in normal day-to-day use. Typically, I'll run it at negative 75 millivolts when I'm gaming, or negative 50 millivolts when I'm not gaming, or I just won't run the undervolt at all if I'm doing work on it. The reason is there's really just no point. Thermals are good, but not perfect. And if you want a really good thermals, you have to undervolt number one, which you can do on the current BIOS. But number two, you'll probably have to repaste, and I will, or I might repaste once the Cryonauts and whatnot actually come in stock. Right now, everything is out of stock, in terms of the good stuff online. Let's see. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about performance. So, the interesting thing about performance with this is that you can see my latest time spy. It performs really well, 9400. It gets about 20,000 in Firestrike. I haven't done a Firestrike recently. And gaming is quite excellent. With a negative 75 millivolt undervolt, let's take a look at the temperatures. So CPU temperatures remain around 870 degrees, and of course it does jump when it's stressed. So it's actually, if you stress this a lot, let me see if I can zoom in a bit, it will jump to in the 90s, and this is with an undervolt. XTU showed, let me look at my monitoring real quick. When I did this, I think 30 minutes ago, there is a maximum temperature of 93 degrees. So undervolted, maxed out, the CPU does not exceed 93 and it won't thermal throttle. But if you don't undervolt it, it actually does thermal throttle. Let me show some of the other examples. So time spy. So when I did not undervolt it, I reset the undervolt. It still gets a really good time spy score. This is 92, 93, no undervolts. So even with a slight thermal throttling, it will still score very well. It says it hits a peak of 93, but you can see the temperature drops right here when it starts to thermal throttle. And then, it doesn't maintain a consistent GPU clock speeds. As the GPU load drops, the GPU clocks, you're going to get more inconsistent performance. You might see frame rate drops in real life games. That being said, it didn't really affect the score that much, although undervolting it did increase the score. Let's see, what else did I save here? System information, no undervolt. This is time spy 4, no undervolt again. This is undervolted, again a slight boost in scores. And I believe it also turboed a little bit higher, 100 megahertz higher. And the more important thing is that it doesn't thermal throttle. You can see it maintains a constant CPU temperature, and there's a constant GPU load, no dips here. Yeah, so one thing that the undervolting will actually ensure you're able to do is maintain consistent frames, and that's important if you use this for like first-person shooters. But it's probably not an end-all be-all. So here's the problem with the undervolting. The current BIOS, I'm on 1.00, allows undervolting, but as I understand them, people as the plundervolt Intel research has gone on, companies are essentially forced to address a weakness or an issue caused by, let's say, security with plundervolt. So Razer really doesn't have much choice with its older devices. You probably don't have to update the BIOS at all if you don't want to. But with this device, it's brand new. It can undervolt now, but if you update to the latest BIOS 1.03, it fixes the plundervolt issue by not allowing you to undervolt. That, of course, affects the thermals. So now the only reason you would actually update a BIOS is if there's a good reason to do that, which is significant performance gains, or stability issues or whatnot. And for now, there actually is a significant issue, and let me show you why. It's has to do with Nvidia. Geforce Experience will not update to the latest drivers, and it's a kind of a problem because so it's on 44.53 and it says it's the latest drivers, and it's not. It's a 3-month-old driver. There's ways of trying to update the driver, but they're definitely not supported. So I would not actually recommend updating the drivers manually. And Razer has said on a forum post that they are going to allow or fix this through a Windows update, a Razer update, a driver update, something. But if it has to be with BIOS updates, that's actually kind of a problem. Because, if that's the case, then you're going to lose undervolt. The thermals are going to struggle. You might be forced to repaste, and you might still not get the level of thermal performance you're really looking for. Real world, I don't think it's really going to matter that much. You might get a dip in frame rate, here and there, but honestly, for me, it doesn't really bother me that much. Not enough for me to return this machine or get something else. Because I do think it is the best overall machine right now. The size is 17 inches, but its chassis is not that much bigger than, let's say, a 16-inch MacBook Pro. So actually, I can fit this inside my 15-inch backpacks, like my Toomey, what is it, Alpha Bravo 3. It's, and if I can find something to deal with the green logo, which I will, either cover it up or something, you can actually take this to work or meetings, and it just looks like a black large laptop. In terms of aesthetics and weight, it is 6 pounds. It's not super light, it's not super thin, but it's not bad. And it lasts about 2 hours on battery life if you have 120 hertz on, max brightness. So here's the thing with battery life for me. If you're going to use a laptop, you have a good laptop, when are you going to actually not have an outlet nearby these days? In the classroom and the work, you're not. You can grab a 100-watt USB-C power bank that'll get you an extra hour or two, no problem. If you're desperate, yes, you can bring this down to 60 hertz via Nvidia Optimus. Let me just pull that up real quick. So to do that, you can launch Razer Synapse. And what this will let you do is select Nvidia Optimus, restart the machine. You can then select 60 hertz as the display, and then use all the power saving modes. Instead of best performance or whatever, lower the brightness, you get 5, 6, 7 hours. But honestly, when are you actually going to be using it on the road? A 17-inch, 6-pound laptop that you can't get something else done with a different machine. But the nice thing about this, and why someone would actually want something like this, is if you're a traveler and for extended, time at client meetings and client locations, what you will actually be able to do is, say, leave this in your hotel and play some games at night, or run some crazy software at the client site that's really demanding, and not have any serious downsides except for the weight and battery life. Right, so we've covered that. One thing I will mention is that I have extensive experience with Macs and PCs. As you can tell, I use a mixture of both. These speakers basically suck. You've got, I think MacBook Air speakers sound better, or MacBook Pro 13-inch speakers. That's one of the downsides that PC makers, they don't. They focus very much on feature set, and they don't focus on overall user experience. So, this is not a laptop I would actually really use for media consumption without, just by itself. It's not really a laptop I would use on my lap for very long, on the sofa, anything like that. My MacBook Pro, 15-inch, it does all those things far better. And I'm still looking forward to the new ARM MacBooks for sure. But as kind of like a desktop replacement that's truly mobile with an excellent display that you can carry with you and take with you on the go and fits in the carry-on, I don't think there's anything better than this. The other 15-inch and 17-inch laptops right now have some issues with either being low resolution or poor display brightness with 1080p displays, even though they're very fast, or high resolution but being fairly slow and being affected by things like OLED, PWM, and potentially burn-in, or not burn-in, but OLED degradation. So if you want something safe, this is IPS. It's going to last a long time. It's fast. It's fluid. If you haven't experienced 120 hertz displays, it's once you see it, you cannot go back for daily use. Now, granted, I say that, but on my other two displays here, which typically just displays static content, so it's not, if you're watching something or displaying static content like watching movies or just reading, doing Word, the 60 hertz displays are fine. I am looking for a newer 4K high resolution 120 hertz 144 hertz displays, but right now the flagship Acers and Asuses are a bit old. They're, I think, 2-3 years old at this point, so I don't want to get them until they at least implement HDMI 2.1, which would allow 4K 120 on the PS5 and the Xbox One Series X. I forget what that one's called. So otherwise, it's this thing charges. Sorry, that was a random thought there. This thing charges the USB-C. It's got Thunderbolt. You can see, of course, it's running Thunderbolt, and it's got my Thunderbolt display plugged in, and Thunderbolt works fine. This side is USB-C. That side is Thunderbolt. Would have been nice to have two Thunderbolts, but doesn't really matter. You can charge both sides, and the power brick is quite large, so I don't think I'd bring that along with me very often. I might probably just buy a spare one if I need to. I think I've covered most of the other aspects. Windows Hello, very good. Webcam, horrible, unusable. This is why I actually have a 4K Brio webcam for video conferencing, working at home. Keyboard, it's not bad. It's not great, but it's fine. I think I've about covered it all. It's been very stable. I am a little bit wary of what's going to happen with driver updates, but I can't imagine that Razer will not allow this to go with normal Nvidia driver updates. It's a gaming laptop and their flagship device after all. So I think it will sort itself out. You might lose undervolt, and that would suck. You might have to repaste, which is actually pretty easy as far as I've heard online. But so far the drivers for the current system works fine. I haven't seen a need to update the graphics drivers. Maybe if a new game comes out that uses whatever new features, that might be an issue. Otherwise, I can briefly talk a little bit about the other devices I'm using. I've already talked a little bit about the LG 4K display. I think this is a UL650W from Best Buy. It's not bad. It's a 27-inch 4K. It's a pretty good color. HDR 10 or HDR 400. It can't compare to color gamut or contrast with these two displays. So you can kind of see already how good the Razer displays actually really is. I've got my Apple Watch. I've got my chargers. I still use a old G305 300S or whatever, and a Razer Theris, my mobile mouse. I've also actually have a couple of other mice, but don't use them as much. This is a Logitech G305 light speed, and I have a Logitech MX Anywhere 2S. I've got a lot of mice, but it's because one of them is connected to my iPad or my MacBook Pro, whatever. For audio, I'm using a Bose SoundLink Mini from like 5, 6, 7 years ago. Works fine. To be honest, sound quality technology has not changed. It's a little bit messy back there. Sorry about that. I have a Bose. What do you call these Boses? Let me see. Bose Move? Boop. No, that's the Sonos. Whatever that the smart speaker is. Honestly, they sound pretty much identical. That one does have a little bit higher clear ends, but this is Bluetooth and wired, so it connects straight to the monitor, which provides audio via HDMI. It's fine. This is the Logitech G915 TKL, low profile, tactile switches. Great keyboard. I'm not really, an expert on mechanical keyboards. This is actually my first one since, back in the 90s when all of them were mechanical. My first PCs. It's good. It's not super loud, and it types really well. And you can really see, the performance in typing speeds and effectiveness. The TKL does not have the 10 keys. I'm not an accountant. I've never really found a use for that. But it does have the useful arrow keys and some of these like page up, page down, which can be useful. Awesome volume control. And it supports Bluetooth as well as wired as well as light speed. So you can actually connect 3 devices to this, even though it says it supports 2. What happens is if you disconnect the cable, the light speed, it defaults on, or you can select between Bluetooth. There's gaming mode, brightness. You can customize lights. I don't really care too much. I'm not really an RGB fan. Actually, you can see I've disabled the backlight here, or I just set it to white. It's distracting if you're just focusing on whatever is on your display. I have a Magic Trackpad 2, works great. It's wireless and wired. So Windows right now, the best support through the drivers is via wired, but obviously I plan to use this with future Macs and everything, so it's a great device for that. And I've got my iPad Pro here, which I am, this iPad Pro, the nice thing is if I wanted to, I could use this as a third display. I just connect the Lightning to USB-C and run an app. I forget which one it is that runs third display. It's not quite as clean as macOS Sidecar, but you could. I actually need it. I mostly use it to keep track of time for work or to stream music to AirPlay. I've got my Nintendo Switch Pro speaker. I don't really play my Switch much these days, but the Pro speaker is good. Works in Steam, so it's fine. I am gonna try to play through the latest 3 Tomb Raider games I haven't actually played yet, but I was a huge fan of those back when I was 20 years ago, so I want to play that. Other games I'm planning on playing with this device is I'll probably replay Final Fantasy 15 because there's a lot of new content. I played that a few years ago on PS4. I've since gotten rid of that. And there is also, yeah, the new Star Wars game, which I got for free with this device. It's like an Intel code pack. And what else am I planning on playing? Maybe Witcher 3, but probably not. So, the reason I actually got this, the main reason that I got this is that two really exciting games are coming out, and that is Diablo 3, which will probably come out in about 2 or 3 years. Okay, that doesn't matter too much. But also Baldur's Gate 3 is coming out, and that is just sick because in about 3 to 6 months, I'm really going to get a lot of gaming use on this because I'm definitely going to play through Baldur's Gate 3. I didn't really enjoy the Divine Divinity series as much. I think it's more, I'm looking for that rich storyline and lore, which is part of Forgotten Realms. But, anyway, so yeah, this will have no problems with the newest games like Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah, I think I've pretty much covered everything I need to on my setup. Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, you can leave a comment below. Oh, there's my 4K Brio webcam. Works great. A USB-C hub, which is connected to to a Thunderbolt display, to the LG Ultrafine display. But yeah, this is pretty much my setup. Got some extra mice here. I've got my Apple Pencil, which I only sometimes use, so connected there. And yeah, there's not too much else to say. So just a brief overview of performance of the Razer Blade Pro. Hope you enjoyed. This was a little bit long. Sorry about that. And yeah, catch you guys later. Thanks for watching. Peace.